I'm Karen Cashin, CEO of Tech Alpharetta. Welcome to Tech Alpharetta's podcast series, Driving Innovation. And today's theme for today's episode is on transformative leadership. And I have here with me today Jennifer Sparks, co-founder of Tech Alpharetta startup Vacmobile. Welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you so much, and thank you for having me.
Absolutely. So I regard you and Vacmobile as more than just a transformative leader in a transformative company. I look at you and what you're doing more as disruption, technology disruption. So tell us what you're working on. Tell us what Vacmobile does.
Well, I am so honored that you actually see it as disruption, because it is. That is what we're doing. Vacmobile is enabling everybody to obtain, store, and transmit their vaccination records and their COVID-19 health status records, meaning testing or other types of records related to COVID, all from your smartphone with just a few clicks. And that is going to be a huge market disruption.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really going to be a game changer.
It is, because there are right now, and we hear it all the time, you can go to my chart and look at your vaccinations or what have you. But that is not what we're talking about. We're talking about certified records, the kind of records that you need in order to enroll your child for school or to obtain or maintain employment. So when you go into your chart and you look at your vaccinations, yeah, you're looking at your vaccinations, but that's not in a form that is acceptable as a certified record as is legally required for third parties to maintain compliance with law and for you to maintain compliance with the law. So this is a different type of record that we're talking about, a digital record that you can actually send from your phone and it will do the job for you. We believe that right now vaccination records are a lot like mobile online banking in the very early stages. If you can imagine that you could only look at your bank accounts, but you couldn't do any online bill pay, that's really where vaccination records are right now.
That's a great analogy to help people understand.
Right.
What you're doing.
So we're talking about allowing people to have that digital medical currency and be able to actually essentially do what they need to do with that information so they can go ahead and perform very important activities in their lives that you need a vaccination record to complete. Right now, the problem is that vaccination records are predominantly accessed on paper and in person, and it's typically through your healthcare provider.
That's right. It's a completely unwieldy process today.
That's right.
And so talk to us a little bit, if you will, about what got you started down this road. I know that this has a great aspect from the COVID and pandemic side of things, but this idea predated COVID. Is that right?
That's absolutely right. So we moved across the country. And when we moved across the country, once we arrived here in Georgia, I thought we had everything we needed. According to the website, I walked into the school with our utility records, our rent contract, everything like that, and our vaccination records. And I learned quickly that no, there was a specific form we needed in order to enroll kids in school, and we didn't have it. And that required, because we had just literally closed on the house and school started a week later, we didn't have what we needed. And in order to get that, we would have had to have an established relationship with a primary care provider, which we didn't have yet.
Oh, in the state of Georgia, right?
Exactly. And so, so we had to go to a public health office, and the process actually took the entire day.
The entire day.
And it was one of those situations where you take a ticket and you wait. And if you're not there when they call your name, they move on to the next person. So 8 hours of waiting and making sure somebody was holding that ticket if somebody else had to run to the restroom.
That's painful. And you had to go through that in order to get what?
In order to enroll the kids in school. So I needed that form that needed to be done, and at that point I really started to question how this could be so difficult. But that was just the beginning. The straw that really broke the camel's back. So that was for my 3 children. We then wanted to bring my stepson over as well, and he was finishing up a degree at Kennesaw in cybersecurity, and the same thing, needed those vaccination records, and except this time, we were having trouble locating his vaccination records, and so
From the state that you had moved from.
correct. And so we moved from New Mexico to Georgia. We were not able to get those records in a timely fashion for his start date. And so it resulted in my husband having to get in the car and drive all the way back to New Mexico and do the same thing I had done here, go into a Bureau of Vital Statistics office to get his vaccination records.
Which is just completely ridiculous
all
in
the
this
way
day
back.
and age.
Yeah. And that was when I realized that this was not even a 20th century solution. This was a 19th century solution that we had gone through. You have to physically go and retrieve something and come back. But that really was the straw that broke the camel's back. And that was the moment when I said, this cannot be. There must be a different way. There must be a better way. And then the whole process started. We started researching what we could do, how this could work. And that was when the real revelation happened that we were not properly leveraging some infrastructure that's been in place since the mid-1990s, and that is the state immunization registries. And that was when we became aware that such a thing even existed.
Yeah, I was going to say most people, myself included, wouldn't have known that such a thing exists.
That's right. But actually the law is that every time you go to the doctor by law within 24 hours is supposed to report that immunization to the state immunization registry in the state where you're living. So every single shot that gets given to anybody, babies all the way to senior citizens, is recorded within a state immunization registry. And it's for a good reason. It's both to control any kind of side effects, safety, as well as supply and demand, right? We have to be able to control supply and demand. So there's that information. It's just sitting there, but it's always been provider facing. It hasn't been consumer facing. And so this is the big disruption, because the issue is right now, if you're a doctor in Georgia, you can't go and look into the New Mexico Immunization Registry. There's issues of interoperability, and that's what we are going to tackle. That's what we're solving. This is a legacy problem, but once this is solved, you will no longer have the problem that when you move from state to state, nobody can possibly track what your vaccination records history is, you or anybody else. I mean, you can, but you have to go back to each one individually, and that is what is so cumbersome.
Yeah, and so does every state have a state immunization registry?
Every state does, and a matter of fact, there also are some places like New York City has its own registry within the state of New York. Same thing with San Diego, and others. There's also certain tribal jurisdictions as well. So it just, there's some territories, right? Puerto Rico has their own immunization registry, et cetera. So there's 65 in all immunization registries for the United States and the territories.
And so your goal is to get all of them to agree to make the information, certified records, available through the smartphone app that Vacmobile is developing.
That's correct, but it's not just our goal. Actually, the CDC has the same goal, and they have a project called the Immunization Gateway. So a lot of market validation there. 38 states have already signed on. So this isn't a new idea. It's just that a lot of times private industry has to come in because we can do things a little bit more nimbly. And that's where we're coming into the picture.
Well, and I'm sure it's daunting from a red tape standpoint as well, getting going about getting permissions from every state to participate in something like this. And I imagine that could have dissuaded a lot of organizations from even considering doing this.
It definitely was a barrier to entry, I think, historically, but we're in the middle of a sea change event, 100-year event. And as I said, it was already on the roadmap, product roadmap. So it's just now we're in the middle of an event that is actually making states all across the country take note and realize that, for example, if you started with distance learning and families have all across the country avoided healthcare settings for fear of catching COVID.
That's right.
So you've now got a situation where you have many, many families that have not taken their children for their routine checkups. Therefore, they're behind on their immunizations. And therefore, those school districts are out of compliance because those families have not met the normal vaccination records compliance that they're supposed to provide, and then therefore the districts are out of compliance. And so this is a problem that we're gonna help everybody solve.
That's just phenomenal. And so ultimately the app will also be able to provide proof of COVID testing results, COVID vaccinations?
That's right, absolutely. It will track every single vaccine, including the COVID vaccine. And the key here is we know that it's going to take a while for that COVID vaccine to be readily accessible for
Right.
the entire population. So in the meantime, there's still going to be a lot of need for testing. That's not going to stop. And so that's why we see it really as critical right now that people be able to not only show that they have received a vaccination, because there's only going to be a limited number of people that are going to be able to have access to that.
Sure.
But many people are going to need to continue to show that they are COVID-free, that they have a test record that proves that they are COVID-free. And we're talking about being able to resume face-to-face business.
Absolutely. It'll really act as an admissions ticket for
That's right.
activities, work, school, everything, right?
That's right, that's right. And a unique feature of the Vacmobile app is that in addition to being able to digitally send this record wherever it needs to go, you can also have on-demand proof with a QR code. So
Right.
that's where we envision a world where everybody in the future is just swiping their phones all the time to obtain entrance into a congregate setting.
That is so exciting. So tell me, how soon till you get to the minimum viable product? You guys must be racing against the clock with the vaccinations
We are.
on the horizon next year.
End of fourth quarter. End of fourth quarter, so in just a month's time, we will have our MVP, and we will be beta testing in Q1 of 2021. So we're right on track
Congratulations.
for, I think, where we need to be with what's happening in the world.
Ah, that's so exciting. So do you have a background as an entrepreneur? Is this your first startup? How did you make this transition?
It is my first startup, and I don't have a background as an entrepreneur, but when you shared with me your thoughts about what we might be talking about today, I did some research about this idea of had I ever thought of being an entrepreneur before, and I stumbled across a really great quote from Sir Richard Branson. And he said that, and I'm paraphrasing, but he said that entrepreneurs are really just solving problems, and what that boils down to is listening. That in order to solve problems, you have to be able to listen.
Yes.
And I think that I have been listening to a lot of discussions about problems and being part of teams of people that have worked to solve problems throughout my career. And this was a problem that I immediately recognized we needed to solve. And then the pandemic hit, and it became readily apparent that this wasn't just a nice to have, this was mission critical. This was going to be a game changer for our country to be able to reopen safely. And
Yeah, no question.
That's where we're at.
Oh, that's great. How are you finding the life of an entrepreneur? It's a little different than the corporate world, isn't it?
It's 24/7. It's
It
everything
is.
everybody says. You're round the clock. All you're doing is trying to do something for the business, working around the clock. And it's funny because, of course, we're all home because
Right.
of COVID-19. Both of my daughters are doing distance learning right now, and my son is home as well. He's 18. And you know, they're watching me, they're having less access to me than they've ever had, even though I used to work outside of the home, and obviously they went to school outside of the house.
Right.
We're all in the house, but I am perpetually on Zooms with investors, with, the development team, or with other members of the Vacmobile leadership team. And it's just a round-the-clock event. And
It is.
I really had no idea how much being an entrepreneur would overtake your brain, but it does.
It does. It does. Have you had that moment, though, where you thought to yourself, well, yeah, it's a lot of hours, but it doesn't feel like work because what you're doing matters so much to you because you have such a passion for it?
I have. And we've had the good fortune. We are having a brainstorming session actually later this afternoon with the director of the Emory Vaccine Center, Dr. Rafi Ahmed, as well as one of his colleagues, Dr. Walt Orenstein, and several others from the community that have dedicated their lives to immunology.
Right.
And to solving big problems about interoperability issues. From Dr. John Duke from Georgia Tech is joining us, and so these are people who are incredibly smart, much smarter than I am. And they have dedicated their careers, and so it's very, very rewarding because they believe that this is a problem that we need to discuss, we need to solve, we need to figure out how we're going to overcome the barriers. And to hear it come from them, that is validation, and
Completely.
that allows me to keep working and to never give up. And obviously, as you all know, because you live this world every day, entrepreneurs are, working hard to bootstrap it, to raise the funds, to get through the seed round, to build the plane while you're going down the runway. And it's scary, but it's also exhilarating.
It is.
Alpharetta has been a joy. We loved it. Obviously, like everybody else, we're not going very many places right now,
Right.
Because of COVID. But we couldn't believe how much was here, how little you really needed to travel any great distance to get whatever your heart desired, whether it was entertainment or incredible dining,
So true.
sports. Everything is here in the Atlanta metro.
Well, thanks so much for being with us here today and sharing a little bit about what you're working on at Vacmobile, and congratulations on developing what's really going to be a game-changing technology, in my opinion.
Well, thank you so much for having me, and thank you, Tech Alpharetta. You have been instrumental. Tech Alpharetta, I just can't encourage anybody who's listening to this or watching this, join a tech incubator. The lessons you'll learn, the connections you'll make, it's invaluable. So thank you, Tech Alpharetta. Thank you, Karen.
Oh, thank you, Jennifer. Thanks again.